Good day, everyone. This is the EJ3 Perspective Show. I'm your host, Ed Johnson. And this topic, which I'm entitled Interracial, was the topic that I was exclusively going to present for this particular session. However, in light of the event in the St. Louis area, which is an area where I reside, with the Stockley verdict, I've already put a video out where I briefly discussed that, but I'm going to sort of tie in how they can relate, even though they seem like they're vastly different and contradictory, I guess, in type of concerns. I'll do that at the conclusion of the video, and I'll also briefly follow up with my initial video where I talked about travel, where I said I was going to follow up and talk briefly about my experiences when I visited Mexico. Now, anyway, in terms of interracial dating, it's a controversial, much discussed, much opinion scenario. First, I'll just start out and give my own personal perspective about it and my personal preferences. Now, I guess I'd start off by just going down the line if we were going to do like a list or whatever. Okay, my first choice, in all things considered, you know, and my wish, my desire, whatever, I'm not currently in actively dating anyone or, you know, having a serious relationship or anything at the present time. My first choice would be a black American woman. There are qualities that, just like anybody else, that I would want the lady to have, but just, you know, not, well, that's sort of tangential and not irrelevant at this terms of discussion, but just in a general sense, as I indicated, that would be my preference, you know. My second preference, if we're going to put it that way, would be I hate that woman of color or whatever, but, you know, let's just say for me, you know, like someone that would be considered non-white in societal standards, you know, and that can be defined broadly, you know, obviously, a woman from a country in Africa, whatever, whether it's northern or southern Africa, basically all throughout Africa, you know, as long as they have the right mindset. And again, you know, the particulars are irrelevant for this discussion. The third choice, or the last choice, would be if it was somebody, you know, that was white, considered white. And even that, I guess I would have to break it down, you know, just like I said, if it happened, the circumstances were such, even then, if they happen to be white, my preference would be somebody was of a Mediterranean stock, you know, that has some, you know, I guess melanin, or, you know, swarthy complexion, you know, gypsy, you know, Southern Italian, Sicilian, some Spaniards, Southern Spaniards, Portuguese, whatever, you know. I mean, that type, you know, as opposed to the more Nordic look or whatever. So, you know. And everyone has their own preferences. I mean, you know, that's reality. You know, even people that, you know, most people that date within their race or whatever, there's still a certain type, you know, that they might have formulated in their mind, you know, that appeals to them, you know, from a physical and sexual and psychological standpoint, etc., whatever. But the thing is that many times in reality, though, is that, you know, a lot of times, you know, you end up with someone that's not exactly your type, you know, whether it be, you know, within your race, which is most of the times, or if it's interracial or whatever, you know, they might be someone that's, you know, you say someone, I mean, a traditional thing, let's say, for example, with, and this is an interesting thing too, sort of tangential or whatever, you know, a lot of guys that I know or knew or whatever, of course they had the whole thing in terms of the physical characteristics of a black woman from a physical standpoint that they want. They want them to be voluptuous, nice buttocks, you know, that's what, you know, the physical attribute that black women are known for and that possess or whatever. And they said they would only deal with that or whatever, but like, I would say if I was going to give a percentage wise, I mean, later in life, I would say like 80% of these guys, you ended up with not having a woman that had the pronounced attributes that they said that, you know, I'm only going to deal with this. They ended up with women that might have been super slim. They might have, their buttocks might have been slim from a physical standpoint. You know, basically they did not fit the model of their physical standard that they had in mind, because they had other characteristics that more mesh with their personality, interest, etc., whatever. So I guess the point I'm saying is that a lot of times it's like, when you meet somebody, when you, whether it's from the work setting, job, or wherever you might happen to meet, and, you know, things start to mesh and you start to have an emotional connection with grows or whatever, it doesn't follow the path that you might have set in your mind. I guess, you know, that's sort of real too. I guess that you probably say that for a lot of people, and that's probably could go universally, I think, just from what I've seen, and, you know, I've heard people of different ethnicities and races say, you know, they might have, there's like, you know, say a white person, a white woman might like a guy, you know, they state a strong preference for, like, you know, someone with strong Northern European features with blue eyes or whatever, but they meet somebody and, you know, another white person and a white guy, and, you know, they're totally opposite from that. They're short, squat, you know, dark complexion or whatever, you know, swarthy complexion or whatever, but they have the intelligence and the other factors that, you know, they mesh and they're compatible or whatever. And then ultimately those things are the most important things in terms of, you know, forming a good relationship and sustaining that or whatever. I mean, that's universal or whatever. But in terms of the whole interracial dating in terms of black people, I'll just sort of briefly touch upon that though. Personally, for people other people that interracially date or whatever, I mean, my view is that that's their concern. It's none of my business or whatever. Even for my own relatives, you know, I'm from a small family, nuclear family or whatever. Even extended family from a short distance, whatever, you know, I mean, like a niece, you know, just one niece or whatever. I guess, you know, what my preference would be that, you know, when she gets married or whatever, that she might marry, I hope that she marries a black man. But if she didn't, if the guy's righteous, you know, if he was another race or another ethnicity or whatever, you know, then ultimately that would be her decision. The same thing with my sister, who's currently not married or whatever. If she got married, you know, you know, same attitude I would have. You know, my preference would be that she would marry like a strong, intelligent black man or whatever. But, you know, if he's a good man, whatever race, ultimately that's fine. That's fine, whatever. I think the problem for me is that for black people, is that when they exclude, you know, their own race, you know, other black people, and make generalized statements, which is almost, or it's just, or even worse than, you know, some white person that would say, well, all black men are like this and all black women are like that. And you know where I'm going with that. I don't need to repeat some of the things that people that have a mindset like that. That's where I have an issue, because you're already precluding, you know, potential candidates just on a preconceived notion, a stereotype or whatever, which is just as bad as, you know, how we are done by many segments of the greater white society, you know, to black men and women. So that I do have an issue with. I mean, if you're going to meet somebody and all the other things that I talked about before, you know, the dynamics of love, you know, that's not an exact science. It's an inexact science, to say the least, or whatever. That's fine. You know, I mean, it happens. It happens. You know, even with all the hoopla and the commercials and all that almost seem like they're fostering, you know, the interracial phenomenon. That's a story for another day. I mean, the bottom line is still, even in terms of black people, most black men marry black women or have relationships, long-term relationships with black women, etc. So with that being said, I mean, I don't think that we should downgrade our own people, you know, like, and I know where it all stems from, but, you know, we need to look at that. If that's the reason why, you know, if you happen to meet somebody at the job, like I started before, and they're of another race and there are other factors come into play, like I said, so be it. I mean, we interact with people of all different races, ethnicity, that happens. But like, if there's a black man that's equally intelligent or has just the same good characteristics or whatever for a woman, and you automatically preclude this person because you only want to deal with a white man or whatever, then that's where I have an issue. And the same thing with black men. If they do this, black men, if they say the same thing, that, white women are so nice or whatever. Now, I want to touch upon that briefly because I've had the experience of, and my life experiences is such that I've had a diverse life where I've had contacts with basically every ethnicity out there, sustained contacts. Basically, white women aren't all that nice. I've never dated a white woman or whatever, but I mean, I've seen guys that have dated them. I mean, like I said, I just say I've had exposure and been in situations where I've seen the dynamics of relationships or whatever. I mean, overall, people are just the same. And like, when someone's nice, I mean, a part of that is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, if a black guy treats somebody super nice, that means, the ones that sort of have this mindset that the white women are so much better than black women, and you do that, of course, you're going to get that. But if you already have a mindset in your mind that black bee or whatever, then of course, somebody's they're going to feel that vibe or whatever, and they're going to have hostile vibes too. Now, are there some, I think, without getting too deep, I think the things become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, I mean, we need to watch that if that's what's going on. Do what you do, but just make sure that you have the same standard in terms of like relationships that you have for everyone. So like you may have, like, again, starting where I said before, okay, you may have a certain preference for another, for your own race or whatever. But if you happen to meet someone of another race and you fall in love or get involved, let's just make sure that you're not, elevating those individuals, saying that they're so great over your own race, that might be at the same personal and mental level as that person. Okay. Briefly, going back to the Mexico scenario when I said about travel, there's, the whole aspect of, racism in Mexico or whatever. And there is some based on what I have read and saw. I mean, the times that I was there, I didn't experience anything per se. But then again, just like when I went to Brazil, going as a tourist, that's a different phenomenon as opposed to like if you're living there, I guess. If I was the Afro-Brazilians that live mainly and primarily in Costa Chica and the Veracruz area that live there and have lived there for long term, whatever, they might have a different perspective on it. My experience is that, I wasn't involved with drug cartel or whatever. I'm being exaggerating thing. I mean, as long as I'm not involved, if you're not involved in any illegal activity, you shouldn't have any problems. And I have a son that's in a long-term relationship with a Mexican citizen, and he lives there part of the year, and then at this point in time, part of the year he has to come back, until he gets the visa thing, gets a permanent visa or whatever there. And he pretty much says the same thing, and he has strong Afrocentric features and tall, and he sort of validates basically what I stated to you. So. When I went to Rosarito, Mexico, it was a nice experience, a nice quiet town, at least at the time that I went there. I was treated hospitably. It sort of reminded me of a Western flair, like I said, in Rosarito, Mexico, where I went to. And at the time with the ex-girlfriend I was driving with, the countryside looked really nice. I mean, it reminded me like scenes out of a movie. So, no problems there in that regard. So in closing, even though it's like a weird juxtaposition to go from my previous video where I talked about the Stockley verdict in St. Louis to interracial dating, which I was going to initially do, is that, a lot of times if you're dealing with particularly with